What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday night. Back with another Sunday night live stream. Hopefully, we'll make this a more consistent thing. But gonna talk about design stuff tonight. I had some artwork that I worked on earlier this week that I thought you all might like to see some of the things I did. It's super simple stuff, but I have to do this type of thing a lot with printing, and it's just kind of something that I think is a nice perk, nice bonus for your customers when you're able to do something like this. And so it'll sort of be a little bit of a tip as far as prepping stuff for screen printing for your customer, and then also just some Adobe Illustrator stuff. So thought I'd give a little bit of time for people to show up. Jason, see you here, man. Glad to see you. And I'll say that as I go through this stuff, as with anything else, I am not the expert. I have my own way that I have learned to do these things. But if anybody has tips, I'm always open, and I am always up for finding a better way, a more efficient way, and a better option. So as I go through this, if you have ideas or tips, feel free to drop those in the chat. But also, if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. I will take some time at the end of this to answer questions. So feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll get to those after I go through some of this design stuff. But other than that, let's just say hello. Hey, Carmelo, Dave Watkins, all three of you guys. Glad to see you here. Looks like we got a few more joining, so give it maybe another minute or so. If you're joining and if you haven't dropped in the chat, go ahead and do that. If not, let's just go ahead and get started. So, what I'm going to show you guys, I have a piece of artwork here. It's this. Let me get the screen here. Okay. So this was actually the design that the customer sent me, and again, it's super simple. It appears to be vector when I first look at it, but upon further inspection, I'll show you in a minute that it actually is not completely a vectorized image. But we're going to do that. We're going to go through the whole process that I took to turn this into a vector image and to get it ready to print. So I'll give you some backstory with this particular print. So the customer sent this to me, and the idea was that they were ordering a single color print. And then he sent me this, and they were going to be on black shirts. These are the ones that I just printed a few days ago on the last live stream. So he wanted these in white, and it was going to be white ink. And so this is what they sent. Well, obviously, at first glance, this is not a white print. It's essentially a two-color print. Depending on the shirt color, you probably don't necessarily want these white areas to be a color. So this could be considered a part of the print as well. What we ended up printing, let's see if I have it down here. Yep, is this right here. Oh, I had it selected. This is what we ended up printing. Again, it's super basic, and the transition from the original artwork to this is not complicated, but I think it can be if you don't really know what you're doing. So that's why I want to kind of show it, and we'll see if you have any questions or tips along the way, or if it makes sense. So this is what we started with. What I did, and what I always do to start off with, is I want to get this into a single color, or get these into separated files. And what I'll normally do is what I'm doing here. I'll just start double clicking into a file, and just to see what it's made of. I'll start moving things, and now I'm seeing that this looks like it's essentially a clipping mask with this graphic. Let's see if I can pull this graphic out. See how the graphic's not moving, but all the shapes are. So they've got a clipping mask going on here. So if I just highlight all of this, I bet I could go up to object, and so it's not there yet. If I look in the layers, this is just a research time to start off with. You're just looking for, what is this thing made of? So if I pull out, let's see, It's not in that group. That gets past it as well. So if I take now, the next thing I would do is I would go in and try to just collapse all of this down. So I'm going to use this Pathfinder here. This just kind of merges it all down. And now I see I lose it all together. So then I want to have that graphic that's inside of it. So you can see I expanded it all out. Let's do this. Let's ungroup everything. And now I can see this is everything that he had pieced together to create this artwork. So the good news is this is vector shapes. We've got some kind of random shape up here. Looks like he was covering up an area, which is fine, but that, we want to blend that together. So there's a couple of ways to do that. I can either come over here to blend shape builder, and I can select that, and then you can see if I've got multiple shapes selected together, I could just draw over those and it's going to combine them into a single shape. So that's one easy way of doing it. Or if I have them selected, it's just two pieces here, then I can go over to this Pathfinder and do the same thing. And I can use this merge, and it will merge it all into a single shape. So first step of cleanup there, we've got that gets this shape started. We've got a lot of pieces here. So if I pull these away and I see all these different pieces, like these aren't necessarily needed. What I need really is what I'm seeing right here. Everything that I see here. So the easy way to do that is I'm just going to, why is this outside? Is this a stroke? There it is. There's a 10-point stroke there. So I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to go to expand, object, expand, and click OK. Now if you see, if I zoom in here, you can see down here my controls here now go to the edge of this white. Before, they didn't. They went to the inside, so the white, that's why I knew that was a stroke. So now I know that's a stroke. I've taken the object, expand all, and it turns the stroke into a solid shape. So now I can see all the different layers and shapes that were kind of created to build this graphic. But what I need is this actual visual representation right here. I don't need, 6 different shapes to create, the ear here. I don't need this outer shape and then these 3 inners. I just need this one all white shape. So I'm just going to select everything, and I'm going over here to this Pathfinder, and I'm choosing this merge one again. And that's going to flatten it down to a single file now, or to a single layer, so that each color is separated. So now you can see I've got these all split up. And now we know, since we're screen printing, we know that this is now going to work in our favor, because what we needed was for just the color and nothing behind it. So we need these to be individual shapes. So we're at a good place now. But he also had this graphic over here that he sent. So an easy way to convert this, I'm going to select it. I'm going to go over to image trace. I'm going to go over to base, this is my own custom setting, but it essentially is a black and white logo. And see, that gets me most of the way. If I now select this little image trace panel here and I open it up, and then I'm going to drop this down so we can see the rest of this stuff. What I normally start with is I usually push this a little beyond the halfway point. I usually put my paths up around 98 or so. I put my corners, again, same area of 98, 97, 99, anywhere in there. And then I drop this noise down. And you can see it's going to give me a lot more detail as I drop that noise down. If I were to take it up, then this will be a lot cleaner, a lot less detail, which, you might want. But I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to see what it looks like with it at 0 or 1. That might be a little much. There's some kind of really small dots in here that aren't really that necessary. This is about a good look here. So I went with about like this. We'll look at the main graphic here in a minute, but the rest of this stuff, we can just leave it as it is. We've got the snap curves to lines. We're going to create fills. We don't want to create strokes, because then we'll have to do exactly what we just did. We'd have to convert them all to objects and or to outlines. So we want this to create fills, and we don't want any, we want them to actually cut out the shape. So what this is doing is if I were to have this selected, then it would create an all white area and then black on top of it. I would just assume it, which is fine, but if I'm doing multiple colors, it's probably not fine. But here are just two colors, then I'm just going to keep it as this, this cutout area. And we don't need to do simplified. This would be if we want fewer anchor points in our end result. This is going to have a ton just because it's so many different objects. So that's not really necessary to do that. All right, so we have it how we want it looking. And now I'm just going to expand. And then I'm going to click into this, and I'm going to select the black. I'm going to go into select, same, fill, and stroke. And now I'm just going to Command C, which is copy. So we could also go up to edit, copy. And if obviously if you're on a PC, I'm sorry, but also it's Control C. I'm not a PC fan. Okay, so now we have our distress graphic, and we just want to place this over top. You can see he's still got the vector stock identifier here, which I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. I'm going to clean up. Oh, I didn't group these. Let's do this. So Command V, we're going to paste it, and then I'm going to do Command G, so that because there's so many different pieces in here, I want to group them together. So I could go to Object Group, or Control G, or Command G. So I'm going to put this up here where I can actually see it, nothing behind it. So now if I double click into here, select this and get rid of it, now I just have the tree trunk. Now, one thing I would do, I've got this piece here that's clean and ready to go. I'm going to make a copy of it. I've got this graphic that's clean and ready to go. I'm going to put it over here out of my way, and I'm going to make a copy of it. And so now I've got these two at a point to where if I were to screw something up and get these to a point where it just looks awful, or I accidentally deleted something, I can start back at this point. I don't have to start back at the very beginning. I can start back here so that I can, then catch up. And so if I were to not have copies and I just work on the same graphic the entire time, well, then I might get to a point and go, oh, you know what? It was looking better a minute ago, 6 steps or 6 revisions ago. I wish I could go back there, but you have to start all over again. So make a habit of copying at different stages. When you get it to a certain point, make copies and manipulate that, and then get that to where you want it. And then if you have a different idea, go back to the original, make copies of that, and manipulate that. Don't work off of the same thing, because then you're gonna get screwed whenever something happens and it doesn't turn out like you wanted, and you have to go back and change it. Okay, so we have our graphic now, and I'm just going to look at this original over here, and I'm going to try and just guess at where the center of the trunk was. About right here in the mouth here. I guess that's the mouth. Yeah. And so we're just going to take and place this right about there. Okay. So at this point, you could collapse this and you're probably sitting at a good point, but I want to take a step back and talk about the 2 variations that I created on this, because it's going to kind of play into how we move forward, and it's going to be easier to see without the distress. So let's go back down here, and let's think about this without the distress for a minute and think about, okay, how best can we print this as a single color? Well, we have 2 options here. I'm going to make a copy of this and do the 2 options. So let's say we just printed what is in black. So I'm going to select the black. I'm selecting the same fill and stroke, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag and select everything, and it's going to deselect the black, and it's going to select everything else, which in this case is the white and the gold. So, and I'm just going to hit delete. So now I have my black version, or I have a single color version that's like this, or this other variation, we could actually do the opposite. So we could say select the black and just delete the black. So now we have 2 variations here, and it's very easy to see because the colors are already set how this is going to work best. Because if I take this and change this to white, that doesn't look right. That doesn't feel right. And it's because it makes the eyes white, and that looks strange. So this looks better because the eyes, the eye area here are darker and the nose is darker. And so this looks appropriate. So if somebody gives you a design like this and they say, hey, it's, let's say it started out as black. It started out this way. And they're like, okay, I want this printed one color, but I want black shirts. So I want to print this in white. Well, I would not recommend doing it like this. I mean, you could, and the customer might be okay with that, and they might even request it. But it would be better if we took this design, and let's say we didn't have that other one to work with. So we take this one, and I would probably, first thing I would do is put a stroke around this, and I would make it white. And so it's already white. Let's do it to the outside. And let's give it rounded corners. And let's just start to kind of make it about like that. So that looks like, I'm just looking at the outside. I just want this outer edge. I just want an outline around this. So if I take this and now I expand the appearance, which gets rid of that stroke, turns it into a vector object. And now I can take and collapse this with the Pathfinder, just like I did before. Okay. And now what I want to do is select if I select the black, do the same thing. Select same fill and stroke, and then hold shift and select everything. And I'm going to turn everything, white. Okay, so now I'm getting to that other result that we had. So now I've got it all white. I can take and let's flatten it again. What this does is this merges all of the same color. So if this happened to be an off shade of white inside of here and then a brighter white here, then it's not going to going to merge those two. It's still going to keep them separate shapes. So it merges together shapes that are touching and are the exact same color. So I changed all of those to the exact same white, and now if I merge, you can see now this turned into a single shape here instead of the multiples like it was a second ago. Now I've got it back to a point where I can select all of the black and remove it and show the customer, okay, great, you wanted this as a white print on a black shirt. There we go. This looks much better. It looks more like their original artwork, even though it's not. You're essentially printing the paper, printing the white. You're printing the white paper behind their artwork because this was their artwork. But in our case, we're using the shirt as the artwork, and the paper is our ink. So when we're printing white like this. So anytime you have an artwork, especially if it's something with eyes, or if it's like snow-capped mountains and the snow is blocked out, things that are more naturally lighter rather than darker, it doesn't always work to just put that exact same mark on a black shirt with white ink as it does with a black ink on a other colored garment. So sometimes it's best to play with this and say, well, maybe I need to invert this. Maybe and it's not always as easy as just swapping the color and printing it. So sometimes we need to kind of add a stroke or some sort of boundary around it, because if I didn't add that boundary and I instead, let's lock this layer so we don't mess it up. If I instead just did the fill areas, well, now this doesn't look like a bear anymore. It looks like some kind of bear-looking thing with little tiny moose antlers. And so that's obviously not what he was after here. So, yeah, whenever you're doing single color designs, it's not always as easy as just changing the color. Sometimes you get a better result if you are able to kind of block it out and create some sort of more accurate inversion of the artwork. Now, let's just go a little further here. If I were going to print this particular design here as a 2-color, then obviously I would take this B and L. This stands for bare level. So if I would take this and I would want an underbase under this. So I would probably, a lot of guys will add a stroke on here, that's white. As you go to print this film, that you're going to make this black, and you're going to print this that way. That way it kind of chokes, and then you have the top coat on top of it. But this would be an easy one to accomplish with an underbase because you're just going to put a small stroke around that. What I actually prefer to do is take the artwork and do an object path, offset path, and I just like the controls that this gives me. So I would do -0.01 1 is usually where I start. And so I look at this and I just kind of look and see how much that goes in. It might be too much. And if it's too much, then I'll go to a 005 and see how that looks. In this instance, like I said, I didn't have to actually print this as 2-color. So now we see the different variations and how impactful that can be to have this more appropriately printed so that the eyes remain dark on the item that we're on, because like I said, this one here was printed on a black shirt, so that looks really nice. As opposed to, let's change this to white. Bring this over and change this one to white. You can see, like, I mean, it's very clear which one of those looks better. Like, this just looks strange. This looks like a negative. It looks like a image, like when you're looking at old. If you're as old as I am, you remember transparencies from an image perspective. And my dad was a photographer, so he dealt with those before they would get actually turned into actual photographs. But this looks like a negative exposure. This looks like a transparency. But this is actually what we prefer. So just wanted to show you guys that difference there. Okay, so now let's go back up to the distressed look here. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually change this B and L back to just a white, because, again, our goal here is to get to the white. And since I have this graphic over top here and it's black and then some of the artwork underneath is black, and I don't really want it to combine, then I can just change this to something random. So, it doesn't have to be the exact color, because I'm knocking this out. I'm going to be deleting it. So if I take now, I select all of the artwork, and I again go back to, I'm going to use this Pathfinder so much. I go back to this merge here and I select that. Now it's merged this all down to a single layer, and I can just start to delete things. So I'm going to select the same color, fill and stroke for the pink, delete it. You can see I've got these kind of ghost graphics. These are just transparent fill and stroke objects. So you could accidentally leave these in there and they get filled and they kind of cover up areas. So you want to be sure. Then every time I do this, the first thing I do is select one of these and then do select same, fill and stroke again, and it's going to select all of the transparent items within that graphic. And so I'm going to delete those to that way they're gone and out of my way. And then I was printing, we printed this as white. And so again, this one is easy. So we're just going to delete all the black. So select same, fill and stroke, black, and there we go. I have my finished graphic that we used to actually print on those shirts. So I'm pretty certain that I went through all of that pretty quickly. And I hope I didn't leave anybody behind. But that's kind of a bird's eye view to begin with. And now let's kind of go back if we need to, as needed, based on what questions you have. So what questions do you have in the comments about any part of that process? Any of it, or any other design questions. So we can start here with what I just did, any of the steps that I took, or if you have any other Illustrator or design questions, let's hear them now. Also, we got a few more. Corey, Daniel, Jonathan, welcome, all three of you. So I'll give you a second, but let's hear some questions so I can answer them. Get a lot of questions about design stuff. Design is one of those areas where there's two completely separate industries in screen printing. Just because you can do the printing doesn't mean you can do the design, and just because you can do the design doesn't mean you can do the printing. And oftentimes at those of us starting solo shops, we have to either figure out how to do both or figure out where to outsource the design to be done. And I think you don't need to be afraid to outsource the design. And I think the screen print community has a lot of great designers in it that are willing to help out other shops, and even if it's paid work, not doing free work, but that you could pay to help do design and output stuff. So don't feel like you have to handle it all yourself. But there is a lot of it that I think Illustrator can be a little bit daunting, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. When you kind of strip away all of the complications of it, it's really not a difficult to use or understand piece of software when it's simplified. So, any questions? Nobody's put any questions. Nobody has any questions about design? I will say the shirt turned out really great. They were very pleased with it. You know what? Let's take a look at what this might look at. Maybe we should do a few other variations of this design while we wait on some questions. So if you have any questions about designing with Illustrator or for screen printing or working with the graphics, then let me know. Daniel says, I wish the artwork was a bit more simple for a better understanding. Yeah, I get it. I mean, this is I mean, it's got the distress, so it's a little more complicated, but this is pretty simple as it pertains to screen printing. I mean, this is about what you get most of the time, although I was lucky this time that he even sent me a vector graphic. I mean, those of us that have been in this for any amount of time, you know that there's so many times people don't send you a vector graphic. Carmelo wants to know how much something like this would cost to outsource if you're not comfortable doing the graphic design at this level. That's a good question, Carmelo. I haven't really tested the waters on that myself, just because obviously it's been something that I've been able to do myself, having been a graphic designer for 20 years. I didn't ever do this type of work as the designer doing the outsource work either, so I don't really know what I know. I know what I would probably price it if it were me. I mean, I know what my hourly rate equates to, although I don't do hourly work because I think it's not fair to the client. But I mean, I think you can find places and people and who are willing to, do this for a pretty nominal fee, and it's something that you could just work into your, your pricing. Obviously, we all get bombarded on Instagram DMs with all of the, vectorizing companies and the digitizers, and they're usually the same company, and so there's always you can start there. I mean, the stuff's super cheap, so you could start there and let that at least get you most of the way, and then you kind of clean it up from there if you can or need to. But there, one of the things I do say with this type of thing is oftentimes I feel like screen printers feel like we have to be responsible for getting that artwork print ready, and I think that's a misconception. And I think if you'll look at a lot of the major shops, a lot of the bigger shops, I mean, you'll kind of get a blend of both. You'll get some who have just an incredible art department and they'll do it themselves. Most of the time, they're going to charge for that, and it could be as much as $75 to $100 for getting a piece of artwork screen print ready. But there are a lot of shops that push back and say, no, you need to come with print ready artwork. And you could work with other designers and, other companies to outsource, or not outsource to, but direct that person to say, hey, here are some companies I work with, or here are some artists that I recommend. And so go to them and get your artwork ready and then come to me and I'll print it for you. I see a lot of shops do it that way. And so there's nothing wrong with that. And especially when you're starting out and you're not a designer, like your customer understands that you're not a designer. It's like, look, hey, I need this to be a certain way. And unfortunately, I'm not a designer. So if you're honest with them up front, they understand that, but they're going to be even more forgiving of that if you're able to connect them with somebody who can. And especially if it's somebody who can get them artwork that is ready to screen print, so that they're not going to do that and then coming back and then going to somewhere else and doing, and having to do all these different stops. You want to make the process easy for your customer. And so getting them to the right place is some way you can do that without knowing how to do the design yourself. Um, I mean, but on a surface level, I would say, something super simple. If it needs to be converted to a vector, you might expect to pay 20 or $30 for it. Doing what I just did, I mean, you might expect, I don't know, 30, 40, $50 for that, for somebody to spend their time doing it. It can just vary. If somebody's starting with zero artwork and they just have an idea, well, now, I mean, they really do need to work with somebody who's a designer, um, and they're going to be paying, $75, $100, $150 an hour. Most of the time, it's probably going to be project based. But all right, Dave says. In fact, let me just add these two so you guys can see it. When you struck the gold, you added a negative stroke. When is the difference on negative stroke and a positive when you have two colors meeting each other with a black outline in between? When you struck the gold, you added a negative stroke. What is the difference? I'm not sure I understand that, so let's move on to the next question that you have here. Looks like you added to it. I added a 3/4 pixel stroke to a green and put the black outline on top of it, hoping to give me some wiggle room when registering two colors. Okay. Um, I'm not totally sure clearly to how to clearly answer, like directly answer your question, because I'm not totally sure what you're asking. But I think I know what you're getting at, and I'll show you. I'll show you in a second. Let me jump to Corey's question real quick because it's the only other one I see. I'm hoping that if I keep watching and placing myself in the environment will rub off on me. I'm new to the computer game, just a welder here trying to learn something new. Um, yeah, Corey, just keep at it. And Carmelo, I mean, anyone, keep at it. The more you play with this stuff, the more familiar you'll get with it. And hopefully I can be more of a resource with this type of thing too, because it's daunting when you look at it, but it's not as complicated as it may seem to begin with. So let's kind of answer what Dave is talking about here and go back to this and take a look at, maybe we could take this a little further with just the plain graphic here. So let me just back up a little bit and let me pull this one. Oh, I wanted to pull all of this out, and let's work with this design for a second. Okay. So let's say a customer sends me this or sends you this, and let's say it's going to be, gosh, I don't know, what color shirt could we do this on? I don't know what color would look good. Let's just say it's on blue. Now, this is a 3-color design because we're printing it on blue, and that means we're going to need the white to be an underbase right here. Okay, so this one is actually going to be pretty easy because you've got this black blocking it in. So let's just get into it and we'll show you. So the first thing I'm going to do, again, I'm going to try and get all of this into its own. So I see this can be pulled apart. I don't want it to be done that way. So I want to get it all into a single layer so that I'm working with as few vector objects as possible because I don't need things hiding behind places. And I've locked this layer right here in place. So this one here, I want it to stay there so I can see, but I don't want to manipulate it. So I'm going to do Command 2, which locks it. So now I can't select it. I can't move it. I can't delete it or nothing. So I'm going to select all of this, and we're going to go back over here to this Pathfinder and merge. And so we have our graphic now. So let's zoom back in, and we would, we would now be able to go into our separations. So let's go ahead and leave that there and pull over here. We're going to need 3 films, right? So we're going to need, at a minimum, you could always do a top white, but at a minimum, you're going to need 3 films. So we've got our 3 colors here. I don't recommend doing this all separate like this, but I'm just going to talk about how to separate them out. Ideally, you would do this in one single location so that they're all in the same spot. But let's just go ahead and separate them out this way and see how it works. Let's do the easy one, low-hanging fruit first. We'll select the black. We'll do the same fill and stroke, and we'll hold shift and select everything else. Oh, select same fill in stroke, hold shift, delete. We have our black film. Okay, that was easy. Let's do the next easiest one, which is the gold. So I just select the two golds, hold shift, highlight everything else, and delete. Okay, now I have my gold. So I have my black, and it's set to black, which if you're, I would recommend you putting your black at a different amount here. Is actually, I would do 30. Actually, wouldn't be doing this in RGB. We would be doing it in CMYK. And I would recommend that for a rich black. So 30, 30, 30, 100. If you're printing film and you're not using all black ink, you're using process ink, then I would use that setting for your black, for your films. So what I would also do is now we're going to change this one to the same thing. So now we have our black film, we have our gold film, and now we need our white. And in this case, we're just going to do the white as the underbase. You could do white underbase and then white top coat. So in that, if we did that, then it would be super easy. We just select all of the white and then hold shift, delete everything. And now we have our white top coat. So it's just going to brighten up all of the white areas where we did an underbase. Now let's look at this underbase. Now, since this has black, you can do this multiple different ways. It's okay to print black on top of white, but that also is adding ink layers on top of each other. So you have to keep that in mind because you may not want that. You might want you might want a thinner layer. You might want each of this to be as thin a layer as possible. So you might not want to print the black on the white. But if you're okay with that, if you're okay with printing the black on the white, then this underbase is incredibly simple. Literally, all you would have to do is that. That is now your underbase film. Because I'm going to print that first. This would be our white film. So let's go ahead and change it to black so we can see these in film view. I would print this first. I would print my white underbase. And then I would print my gold. And then I would finish with my black. And this black will, go over top of the gold. All of this would work just fine. In fact, since these are all different objects and they're butted up to each other, I wouldn't want there to be any sort of gaps here like this. You could take this one step further and take all of these and just blend it together like this. So now it's literally one object. So that would be my white film for the underbase. But let's say we didn't want to print white underneath our black. So we wanted the black to be gone. So we don't want to print white under here. So we're going to get rid of the black first. And now we know this white is fine because we're just going to print another white directly on top of it. So we don't need any sort of choke around this white. And when I say choke, I mean in screen printing, when I'm printing a top color on top of an underbase white, I don't want that underbase white to leak out underneath that color any. I want to be sure I cover all of the edges of that white underbase. Oftentimes that means that color actually prints a little bit off of the underbase. Now, the goal is for that to be as minimal as possible so it's not noticeable, but that's the idea, is that it prints around the outside of the white all the way around its edges so that none of that white is showing through. And it essentially chokes the white into a boundary. It becomes the boundary that chokes that white around the edges. And when we had the black here, if we had two colors butting up next to each other, like let's say we were printing black right here, and it butted up next to this, I actually don't need to choke my underbase any because that black is going to do it for me. That black is going to cover up, or that other color, let's say we were doing another color that didn't need an underbase. That other color is going to prevent that white from bleeding beyond its boundaries of this gold. It's going to cover it, if anything else. And so we don't necessarily need a choke when we've got colors butting up to each other, where one's getting an underbase and one's not. But in this instance, let's say that we didn't have that black, and so we need an underbase under here. So what I would do, we have our yellow screen. right? We have that film up top, so we don't need to worry about having these full size. We've got that in the top part. So what I would normally do is zoom kind of in. I would keep in mind the size of this print. It's going to be about 8 inches wide on the chest. And so again, the first thing we're going to do is turn this black because we're printing our film. So this is going to be black. And then let's go ahead and turn everything black so that we actually get that full film effect. So we get everything black here. So these two things here need to be choked because we're printing a top color on top of those. We can do this one of two ways. Like I mentioned, you can do it with a stroke. And in this case, it's got a 1 point stroke, and this stroke is centered on the object line. We could also, we could get the same effect by doing a 1/2 point stroke and mark it to inside. So if you see here, this is the exact same amount being choked as what we had when this was 1 and set to center, this area here. Because you can see the outline here of the actual black object is this center blue line. So the same effect, if I drop this down to 1/2 point and put it on the inside, same thing. So, you would just play with these points. You would get this down to, some guys will do 1 point, some will do, 0.25, 0.35. I mean, it depends on the size of the artwork you're doing and how much of a choke you need, how much flexibility you need when you're registering that print. If your press doesn't have micro registration and you're not comfortable with registering prints, you haven't done much of it, it's probably good to give yourself a little more grace here. You don't want to do too much because then you'll notice there will be, in this instance, we're printing gold on top of the white. You would have a very thin layer of darker gold that didn't get on the white. So, you want to minimize how much actually goes off the edge. But you would play with this. You would say, hey, I think I could register it to 0.5, or I think I could register to 0.25. Again, I like to do this I don't use a stroke. I will select the object and go up to Object, Path, Offset Path, and then I will choose, I've got my preview on, and now I can see this extra blue line here of how much it's going to offset. So, I could take and move this, I could actually punch things in, negative 0.05. We can see that's like a huge one, so we don't want to do that. What if we did 1.5? That's still pretty big, so we drop down to 0.5. That's pretty good. We could look at this and go, well, we could also do 7.5, and it expands just a little bit. You kind of play with this and get it to a point where you feel like it looks like you're getting enough. The goal is that you get good enough to make this as minimal as possible. But if I select this now, then you can see, I've got an object underneath here that's not supposed to be there. You can see, shoot. If I go back to Object, Path, Offset Path, and you can see it shrank the object down. So now when I print, if I were to take this and copy it, and let's place it over the original right here. You can see how that yellow shows around it. That's because that's going to cover up. It's going to choke that underbase underneath all of it. And that's why I offset that path underneath there. I didn't do this one, just this one here. You can see what the end result would look like there if we were to print this in the wrong order. But I don't know if that clarifies what you were asking Dave, but let me know. Yeah, and Jason G looks like he agrees. Offset path is the way he is doing it. Daniel said this process is called separation, right? From what I've heard, most print shops outsource this job. This is called separation. This is manual separations. This is, I have a video where I go through this as well, the manual separations, but this is if you don't have RIP software, this is the process that you would have to take. So let me, Daniel's asked if I can take this a little further and actually do with registration marks like I was printing a film and everything. So let me just go ahead and do that, and I'll show you guys my actual process here. So let's jump back over to the application. I have an art template that I use, so I'll go new from template, and I've got it right here. It's called artwork, and I made this template. And what it has for me is it's got an area for a proof, and I actually have a layer that's hidden right here, so you can see my proof layout. And I have another video that goes through all of this and how I set it up and how I use it. And then this over here is my film. So when I get ready to output film, this is what I use. And thankfully, what I would do is I would thankfully have RIP software, so I'll show you how I do it with that, and then how I would do it if I didn't have that. So the first thing I do, I paste the artwork on the film area here, and I choose the size that I know I'm going to print it. So like I said, in this particular one, we were printing 8 inches wide. So I'm going to throw it right here, and then I have some symbols that I have created. Again, I go through this in my video, but I've got one here for registration marks. So I pull this out, and I place it, and then even if I have it kind of off, I come over here to this align tool where it says align to artboard, and I just click center. And so it centers it right on the artboard. And then I want to actually detach this, just break this link for it to be a symbol. I want it to just be a vector object. So I'm going to break the link, and now you can see it's just vector objects, and it even split these two up, which is good because I then adjust this one to wherever I want it to be. So I'm going to bring it, about right there, about an inch or so away from the artwork. This one's actually a little close. And so I'm going to select this artwork, and I'm going to center it as well to the artboard. So now I know these are both centered to the artboard and to each other. And if I had RIP software, then I would go into each of these colors, and I would, if they weren't already like let's see this was red, then I would want to double click this and change this to a spot color, and then click OK. And that's going to cause it to have this little dot right here. So you can see I already have them laid out. So I'm going to change that one to a spot color. And I'm going to change the yellow to a spot color. So let's go ahead and do that with this one. So let's double click it. Oh, actually it's not on here. So it's over here in the color picker, but it's not showing up as a swatch over here. So the easy way to do that is just drag it in place. So now with my art selected, I'm going to double click that and change this to a spot color and click OK. And I don't really care what shade of color it is. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I could honestly print the film like this. All that matters is it's a spot color that's different from this spot color. So I've got that one. And then if I were to print the white, then I would want it to be a spot color as well. So I would select it all and also make it a spot color. Again, I could do this blue. All that matters is it prints on a film in the appropriate color. So now all I need to do is print, and I select my my printer here. So I've got my Canon printer, I've got my print fab, RIP, and then I would go into my page setup. I'm going to choose for my Canon printer. I'm going to choose 13 by 19. I have presets for all of this, but just showing you. Click OK. And then in my output, you can see that it's got my spot color selected. It's not going to print cyan, magenta. If these were checked, it would mean that I have colors in this artwork that are still processed that need to be converted over to spot. And so what should be selected here are just the spot colors. So this is going to print 3 films. It's going to print the yellow as one film in black ink, the black as one film in black ink, and the white, in this case a blue, in black ink on one film. And then this 60 LPI 45 degrees is a good default for your printer settings. So let's say that I did not have RIP. Okay, so now I'm going to group these together. So now it doesn't matter where I put this. although I would recommend always printing it in the same place in the film. So like I wouldn't print the second film down here and the first one up here. Like even if there's room, like let's say that even if this was a smaller design and you had room to do this, I wouldn't do this. I would do some other artwork down here or cut the page in half and reuse it to print a different film. I would print them in the exact same position because sometimes you'll get slight augmentations in the printout because you printed at different portions or different positions on the film. So I would keep them consistent this way, but since we have them grouped with the registration marks here, then we know that if I work off of this one, they're all going to be located in the same place. So now what I can do is I can take this group and I can pull it out over here and I can say, okay, I've got black, white, gold. Okay. I would recommend you take and do like a little note and put the, what film is on each of them. So let's double click into here and put this up somewhere. And then I want this to print no matter what color it is. And so I'm going to choose this registration right here. This registration. You'll see my registration marks are selected as registration. See, it's highlighted there. If I select white, you can see it's highlighted. Those are registration. Anything that's registration will print on every film, no matter what, if you're using RIP. So I have that as registration. So I would recommend, again, putting some colors in here so you know what's what. Let's say this one is gold. And a lot of guys will put, art number here, screen one, print order, stuff like that, like all kinds of information. Do what you wish. There's not really any right or wrong way. So we got white here. Okay, so now let's prep these. So again, we just go that same path we did earlier. Let's do the others first because they're easier. So let's do the gold. Select the gold, select everything else, delete it. Now, you don't have to delete it. We can just change it to white because that's not going to print. Our printer doesn't have white. So white is not going to print. So I can just change it to white and change these two to my rich black. And again, those settings, 30 or 35, and then 100 on the black in CMYK and spot color. Well, if you're not doing RIP, it doesn't have to be spot. Okay, so our gold screen is ready. Now we can go over to our black. We can select our black, and we want to make this, it's the rich black, so we're good there. So then we want to select, come on, black. What happened to my menu here? So we're selecting our black. Everything else, we're going to turn it to white. Now we have our black screen. So we have our black screen, our gold screen, and then we need to do our white screen. And I'll go ahead and do it as if there were an underbase. So let's first take our black and make it white. And then we'll take our white. For some reason my menu up here is not working. I can't select. No, okay, that's okay. So we'll just select them manually here. Take these and turn them black. Now we have our white, but we need the white underbase under here. So let's imagine that we're not printing white underneath the black, so we need a slight choke here, or maybe we're not even printing the black altogether, so we need a choke for an underbase, just for practice here. So we're going to change this to black, and then I'm going to, I don't know if I can do this. I need to figure out why it's not letting me do. My offset path. Hang on one second. Let me switch off of this so I can figure out what's going on. Sorry, can't do any tech here without something going wrong at some point. Okay, got it back. Sweet. Application. Okay. Was this our white? Yep, this was our white. Okay, so let's get back in here to these two. I'm going to zoom in, and let's say that we go object, path, offset path, and we would go negative 0.005 and see how that looks. And that's good. I've got some setting here on my system that's not behaving correctly, because that should shrink that. Okay, it is. Yep. If I zoom in, you see the gap right there. So now we have our underbase. It's just hard to tell from this area because those lines are around it. But when we zoom in, we could see it. The path that goes all the way around this means that I have offset that path into itself, essentially the same as if I were to do a white stroke. So if we go back to this area and we do a white stroke, let's turn this to white, we've accomplished essentially the same thing. You can see here. So I could take this down a little bit. Now we can see that that's less than it was. So quick separations right there. 3-color design. And now we have all the films that we need, and we still have the shapes in here, so we could go change it. Like, let's say they come back and say, actually, we want, the other graphics in here to also be gold, so then we can come in and we still have those to recover from. We have to start over. But okay, what else? What films do you use in your printer? Where do you get them from? I get my films from Ryonet, and they're just the base layer waterproof film. They've worked great for me. I've not had any issues with them. I can actually let me just see here. And by the way, if you do buy anything at Ryonet, screenprinting.com, if you are willing to help me out, help the channel, and what I'm starting here, and you're willing to use my affiliate link, if you don't mind bookmarking it, it's SSP, Startup Screen Printing, ssp.inc/Ryonet, ssp.inc/Ryonet. So I'm on their site here. If I go to their base layer waterproof output film, 100 sheets for $73 of the 13 by 19. There are probably cheaper options. In fact, I think I've gotten cheaper options. Some people will get them off of Amazon, and might as well use my Amazon link. If you're doing that, I won't bog you guys down with affiliate stuff. But I've been happy with the base layer ones. All right, so we're at about an hour. Any other design or Illustrator or output or graphics questions before we wrap up? Got quite a few people watching now, so I'd love to know, who all's watching, where you're watching from, and if you have any more questions, I'll give about 10 more minutes as long as we have questions. But if not, we'll wrap it up and look forward to doing this again soon. So I'll give it a second to see. The Amazon one is ssp.inc/Amazon. Those are just the generic ones that take you to, straight to Amazon or straight to Ryonet. Most of my affiliate links I've posted down in the description of all my other videos. Um, and again, feel no pressure to use those at all. I mean, honestly, I know some people are uncomfortable about that, and sometimes it feels like I'm asking for money. But if you don't mind helping me out in my goal of doing this full time, not YouTubing full time, but helping screen printers like this full time, I really would appreciate your willingness to use that affiliate link for any of them for anything that you're doing. And if you're always curious if I have one for some certain thing you're using or purchasing, always let me know, because I'm sure I probably do. I'm just not big on forcing those onto people and pushing it out there. So if you don't mind using them and bookmarking them, I really would appreciate it. I do get a small kickback, and it doesn't increase your price at all. So what else? What other design stuff? If no other design questions, I'd love to know what everybody would like to see the next one of these from a topic perspective. What you would like me to cover? What other topic can be as specific as possible, or generic, whatever. But what topic would you like another future live video like this? And what do you think of this live format versus just having a video, that I just publish out of nowhere? Dave, good question, and thank you for asking that. Do I get anything? If you use my affiliate link at the time that you're going to make a purchase, or that you go to that website, if you navigate off and you come back at a later date, I don't get it. But if you use my affiliate, like if you were to use the Amazon one, and you go to Amazon, and at that session you purchase an item, it could be anything on the entire Amazon website, I will get credit for that. Same thing at Ryanet. Anything at Ryanet, even if I link you to a specific product and it's an affiliate link, you can go to another product and still purchase that, and I will still get credit as long as it's in that same session. But if it's not, if you navigate away, you come back later, or you close it, you come back another day, you'll have to re-click that link before you buy in order for me to get credit. But so thank you for asking that. Great question here, Mark. Sportswear, screen printing, and embroidery has said, I'd like to see each of the Pathfinder tools explained in depth. Yeah, that's a great that's a great question. It's a great topic. That is certainly one of those areas that can be a little complicated, and some of them do very, very similar operations. So some of them you will never use, some will use all the time, and some you use in certain situations. So yeah, thank you for the idea there. I will make note of that and try and cover that in a future video, whether live or pre-recorded. And then another question here, Daniel, does the quality of the film have anything to do with the outcome of the design on a printed shirt? Not directly, but yes, in a way, because the quality of the film can determine how well that your ink took to the film, and how opaque that ink is. And opaqueness is darkness. It's that you can't see through it. Transparency is lightness. A lot of times we get those mixed up because you change the opacity of something to more transparent. So when I say opaque, I mean it's solid. So the film can help increase the opacity of your print if it's a good film. If it's you print on the wrong side, you can, because these films do have sides. They've got one side that's got a material on it that accepts the ink and holds it to the sheet. If you print on the slick side that doesn't have that additive, your ink will just smear, and it won't stick and stay in place. So you have to be sure you put the film in correctly in the printer. But it all just points to having a quality screen. So if you have film that is maybe not clear enough, or it gets dirty, or that doesn't speak to the quality of the film necessarily. But if it's not dark enough, or it's not got a good coating on it that can really receive the right amount of ink to hold that opaque print to really block the light from exposing that screen properly, then yes, you will see a negative result on the shirt, but it will be because you have a bad exposure and a bad screen, and you could trace that back to bad film. I've not seen or heard of any major issues with people like just absolutely having a disaster and it all being because of their film. So I wouldn't put too much concern or worry on it. If you want to try something cheap from Amazon, give it a shot. You guys will hear me say, you have heard me say, or will hear me say all the time, um, that as it pertains to rules and what you can or can't do, there are none. It changes for every shop, and if you think you would like to give something a try, give it a try. It's all worth trying, and it could work great for your shop, even though it did not work well for my shop even. So, yeah, hopefully that answered your question. All right, well, I'm gonna call it quits right there, and consider this a fun evening. I appreciate the questions. Thank you everyone for joining, and look forward to doing more of these type of live teaching scenarios. I think it was a lot of fun. I think it's a little more fun than just getting on and doing Q&A, but also a little more fun than just doing a blanket, pre-recorded video. So I like the interaction, and I appreciate the questions and the comments. So everyone have a great night and a great week ahead, and we'll talk soon.